any organization, understanding what constitutes an information asset is paramount. Information assets are not merely confined to digital data stored in databases or documents, but extend to any piece of information that can add value to the organization, or, if compromised, can cause harm. This broad definition includes emails, software codes, operational manuals, customer databases, intellectual property such as patents and trademarks, and even employee knowledge. The initial step in safeguarding these assets begins with a clear definition that aligns with the organization's objectives and regulatory requirements. This definition sets the stage for identifying which pieces of data are critical to the organization's success and must therefore be carefully protected. For instance, a technology company might prioritize the security of its software codes and patents, while a healthcare provider would focus on patient records and clinical data. Compiling an asset inventory is a detailed and iterative process. It involves listing every information asset, regardless of its format, digital or physical, or location, on-premise or cloud. This inventory acts as a foundational element in the information security framework, providing a comprehensive overview of what needs to be protected. Creating such an inventory requires cross-departmental collaboration to ensure every asset is accounted for, from the marketing department's customer databases to the HR department's employee records. The inventory should detail the asset's description, location, owner, format, and the data classification it falls under. Regular updates to the inventory are essential, as assets can change, become obsolete, or new assets can be created over time. Assigning sensitivity ratings to information assets is a critical step in prioritizing their protection based on the level of impact their compromise could have on the organization. This involves evaluating each asset for its confidentiality, integrity, and availability requirements, often referred to as the CIA triad. Assets are rated on a scale, e.g., low, medium, high, to reflect their sensitivity and importance. High-sensitivity assets might include trade secrets, regulated personal data, or operational technology systems controlling critical infrastructure. The sensitivity rating influences the security controls and measures that will be applied to protect the asset, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively. Now, let's talk about establishing classification groups. With sensitivity ratings assigned, the next step is to classify assets into groups. This classification is crucial for applying appropriate handling and protection measures. Common classifications include public, internal use only, confidential, and strictly confidential. Each classification has its set of policies and controls regarding access, handling, storage, and transmission. For example, public information may be freely distributed and requires no special protection measures, whereas strictly confidential information, such as employee personal data or strategic plans, would be subject to strict access controls and encryption requirements. Identifying high-impact assets involves determining which assets, if compromised, would cause the most significant harm to the organization's operations, reputation, or financial standing. These assets are critical for the organization's success and may require additional layers of protection. The identification process involves analyzing the potential impact of an asset's loss or compromise, considering factors such as the legal ramifications of a data breach, the potential for financial loss, or the impact on customer trust. High-impact assets might include proprietary research data, critical infrastructure control systems, or major customer databases. Cataloging and categorizing information assets underscores the complexity and importance of the initial steps in creating an effective information security strategy. Understanding what information assets an organization holds, their value, and the potential impact of their compromise is fundamental to prioritizing and allocating resources for their protection. Next, we will dive into identifying vulnerabilities and threats, a critical next step in developing a robust information security framework, and my personal favorite, vulnerability scanning. This phase is crucial for understanding the landscape of potential risks to information assets and setting the stage for developing effective strategies to mitigate these risks. Fostering a culture of security within the organization encourages employees to report any irregularities or potential vulnerabilities they encounter, further strengthening the organization's defense mechanisms. Beyond technical vulnerabilities, weaknesses in organizational processes can also pose significant threats to information security. Such weaknesses may include inadequate access controls, insufficient data protection measures, or lack of employee awareness regarding security policies. To identify these weaknesses, organizations can conduct internal audits, review security policies and procedures, and engage in regular training and awareness programs. It's also beneficial to adopt a risk management framework that aligns with industry best practices, such as ISO 27001, which provides guidelines for managing information security. Addressing these process-related vulnerabilities often requires a shift in organizational culture towards prioritizing security in every aspect of the business operations. This shift may involve revising existing policies, improving communication channels regarding security matters, and ensuring that security considerations are integrated into the decision-making process at all levels of the organization. Let's not forget about accounting for environmental contextual threats. Environmental and contextual threats encompass a broad range of external factors that can impact information security. These can include natural disasters, such as floods or earthquakes, which threaten physical infrastructure, political instability that can lead to cyber warfare or targeted attacks, and even the competitive landscape, where corporate espionage might be a concern. To effectively account for these threats, organizations must conduct thorough environmental and contextual analyses, considering both the physical and digital landscapes in which they operate. This analysis helps in developing contingency and disaster recovery plans, ensuring business continuity in the face of unforeseen events. Also, staying informed about global and local political and social developments can provide early warnings of potential threats, allowing organizations to take preemptive measures to protect their information assets. With that in mind, let's think about leveraging threat modeling. Threat modeling is a systematic approach used to identify potential threats to information systems and evaluate the organization's vulnerabilities against these threats. This process involves identifying valuable assets, assessing the system from the perspective of potential attackers, and identifying the ways an attacker could potentially compromise the system. Threat modeling helps organizations to prioritize security efforts by focusing on the most significant and likely threats. It encourages a proactive stance on security, moving beyond reactive measures to a more strategic, anticipatory approach to threat detection and mitigation. Effective threat modeling requires a deep understanding of the organization's assets, the potential attackers, and the attack vectors they might use. This understanding allows for the development of targeted defense strategies that address specific vulnerabilities and threats, rather than relying on generic security measures. Identifying vulnerabilities and threats is a critical step in the information security management process. By exposing system and software vulnerabilities, recognizing weaknesses in organizational processes, accounting for environmental and contextual threats, and leveraging threat modeling, organizations can develop a comprehensive understanding of the risks they face. This knowledge is essential for developing effective strategies to protect information assets against potential threats. Next, let's explore the evaluation and ranking of risks, analyzing and implementing control measures, and formulating risk mitigation strategies, further detailing the comprehensive approach to managing information security within an organization. Building on the foundation laid by the identification of vulnerabilities and threats, we now move into the critical stages of evaluating and ranking risks, followed by analyzing and implementing control measures. These steps are essential in formulating a comprehensive risk management strategy, guiding organizations on how to allocate resources effectively to mitigate risks. Evaluating the potential impact of identified risks on the organization is a multifaceted process. It requires understanding not just the immediate financial implications of a risk event, but also the long-term effects on reputation, operational capability, and legal compliance. Evaluating the potential impact of identified risks on the organization is a multifaceted process. It requires understanding not just the immediate financial implications of a risk event, but also the long-term effects on reputation, operational capability, and legal compliance. This evaluation is often conducted through scenarios analysis, where different breach or failure scenarios are considered to estimate their impact on the organization's critical operations and objectives. Building on the foundation laid by the identification of vulnerabilities and threats, we now move into the critical stages of evaluating and ranking risks, followed by analyzing and implementing control measures. These steps are essential in formulating a comprehensive risk management strategy, guiding organizations on how to allocate resources effectively to mitigate risks. Evaluating the potential impact of identified risks on the organization is a multifaceted process. It requires understanding not just the immediate financial implications of a risk event, but also the long-term effects on reputation, operational capability, and legal compliance. This evaluation is often conducted through scenarios analysis, where different breach or failure scenarios are considered to estimate their impact on the organization's critical operations and objectives. Organizations may use quantitative methods, such as calculating the potential financial loss, or qualitative methods, focusing on the severity of impact on customer trust or market position. This assessment helps prioritize risks, ensuring that those with the most significant potential impact receive the highest attention. We should also consider likelihood of occurrence. After assessing the impacts, the next step is to estimate the likelihood that each identified risk will occur. This estimation can be challenging, requiring a deep understanding of internal processes, the effectiveness of current control measures, and the external threat landscape. Organizations often leverage historical data, industry reports, and threat intelligence sources to estimate risk likelihoods. This process is inherently uncertain, but it is crucial for prioritizing risks and making informed decisions about where to invest in security measures. From here, it is important to conduct comprehensive risk assessments. Combining the assessments of impact and likelihood, organizations undertake a comprehensive risk assessment. This assessment considers the specific context of the organization, including its industry, regulatory environment, and strategic objectives. The comprehensive risk assessment results in a prioritized list of risks, providing a clear picture of where the organization is most vulnerable and where security efforts can be most effectively concentrated. This process should be dynamic, with regular reviews to adjust for new threats, vulnerabilities, or changes in the organizational context.
Risk avoidance is the strategy of eliminating activities or conditions that would introduce unacceptable levels of risk to the organization. This might mean choosing not to store certain types of sensitive data to avoid regulatory compliance risks, or deciding against entering a market with a high threat of cyber espionage. While risk avoidance can effectively eliminate certain threats, it may also limit opportunities for growth or efficiency gains. Therefore, decisions to avoid risk need to be balanced with strategic objectives, ensuring that avoidance does not hinder the organization's ability to achieve its goals. Risk acceptance occurs when an organization decides that the cost of mitigating a particular risk would outweigh the potential impact of the risk materializing. This decision is often based on a comprehensive analysis of the risk's likelihood and impact, considering the organization's capacity to absorb the consequences. Accepting a risk does not mean ignoring it. Rather, it involves regular monitoring to ensure that the risk remains within acceptable boundaries and that any changes in the risk's profile are promptly addressed. Risk reduction or control is the most common strategy, involving the implementation of measures to lessen the likelihood or impact of risks. This could include deploying additional security technologies, enhancing policies and procedures, or conducting targeted training programs to address specific vulnerabilities. Risk reduction measures are designed to bring risks down to a level that is acceptable to the organization, recognizing that not all risks can be entirely eliminated. The effectiveness of risk reduction strategies should be regularly reviewed and adjusted as necessary to respond to new threats and changes in the organization's operations. As for risk transference involves shifting the responsibility or impact of a risk to a third party. This is often achieved through insurance policies, where the financial impact of data breaches or system failures can be mitigated. Other forms of risk transference include outsourcing certain operations to vendors who specialize in managing specific types of risk, or entering into partnerships where risk is shared between parties. When transferring risk, it's crucial to ensure that the third party has adequate measures in place to manage the risk effectively, and that the terms of the transfer are clearly defined and understood by all involved. In conclusion, formulating risk mitigation strategies is a critical component of an organization's information security management program. By carefully considering options for risk avoidance, acceptance, reduction, and transference, organizations can develop a balanced approach to managing risks, aligning their security efforts with their strategic objectives and operational requirements. Throughout this presentation, we've explored the comprehensive process of managing information security within an organization, from cataloging and categorizing information assets, identifying vulnerabilities and threats, evaluating and ranking risks, to analyzing and implementing control measures and formulating risk mitigation strategies. Each step in this process contributes to building a robust defense against the flurry of threats facing organizations today, ensuring the protection of valuable information assets and the resilience of the organization's operations.